Okay, this is me again. This video is going out to answer the question about violence in our history. Combat, also combat. It's about combat. It's about why this happens. All right, the people who are familiar with our Jewish moral teachings may be surprised at the brutal behavior ascribed to Jehovah and the Hebrews. The most famous of the Jewish moral teachings are, of course, the Ten Commandments, which were reportedly given to Moses by Jehovah during the Hebrew trek to the Promised Land. After Moses' death, Jehovah and the army of Israel clearly violated the commandments in a big way. Thou shalt not kill was transgressed when the Hebrews massacred the inhabitants of Canaan. The Hebrews ignored the commandment, thou shalt not steal, when they robbed the dying cities of their precious metals. They were no better about adhering to the commandment, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's home, nor anything that is thy neighbor's, when they committed genocide to take away the land of their neighbors. This behavior is puzzling because many biblical commandments do establish a direct code of conduct. For example, the Hebrews were admonished never to cooperate with a wrongdoer by giving false testimony. Another commandment addresses the importance of individual responsibility in the face of group pressure by stating, you shall not go along with a group in doing evil. Tolerance for outsiders was made law. Thou shalt not vex a stranger nor oppress him. Thieves were usually required to pay restitution to their victims. How do we count to the existence of such humane commandments in the face of such barbaric behavior? I want to comment here that not all Old Testament commandments were humane by today's standards. Freedom of worship was not tolerated. Slavery was an accepted institution. And Hebrew men were allowed to sell their daughters into slavery. The eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth form of punishment does not always result in justice. Part of the answer may lie in the words of Manethal. And what he says is that the wonders which Moses narrates as having taken place upon the mountain of Sinai, that's the mountain upon which Jehovah reportedly gave Moses many of the commandments, are in part a veiled account of the Egyptian initiation which Moses transmitted to his people when he established a branch of the Egyptian Brotherhood in his country. Now, if Manethal's words are true, then many of the commandments may have come from humane sources within the Brotherhood rather than from custodial sources. This would indicate the continual presence of genuine humanitarians within the Brotherhood despite custodial dominance. Moses himself appears to have been, at least, to some degree, such a humanitarian. The Bible describes Moses as a man of moderation who frequently intervened on behalf of the Hebrews when Jehovah was about to mete out a violent punishment. As we shall see several times in this book, lingering humanitarian influences within the Brotherhood have often come to the surface, but sadly not enough to entirely undo the corrupting influences. Another puzzling aspect of the biblical genocide story was the behavior of the people being slaughtered. According to the Bible, only one city surrendered. The rest chose to fight and be butchered. When confronted with an overpowering Hebrew army, and perhaps even a thundering God in the sky, is it not likely the more besieged cities would surrender, or at least offer to vacate Canaan peaceably? You know, the Bible presents an interesting explanation why that did not happen. There was not a city that made peace with the children of Israel, save the Hivites, inhabitants of Gibeon, all others they took in battle. For it was the Lord who hardened their hearts, that they would go against Israel in battle, that he might destroy them utterly, that they might find no favor, but that he might destroy them. And that's from Joshua chapter 11, verses 19 and 20. The above passage states that Jehovah had manipulated the victim peoples into fighting the Hebrews so that the victims could be destroyed. This is a stunning and important mission, but it would imply that Jehovah or the custodians dominated other cities in the region and used their influence to manipulate people into fighting the Hebrews. This would not have been the first time it happened. The Bible reports similar manipulations in an early episode when the Hebrews were still slaves in Israel. Jehovah had instructed Moses to go to the Pharaoh to ask that the Hebrew tribes be freed. Jehovah, however, had influence over Pharaoh, and Moses had been warned in advance that Jehovah would cause the Pharaoh to say no. You know? According to the Bible, Jehovah had a definite reason for manipulating the Pharaoh in that fashion. You know, and it says, and the Lord said to Moses, "Go to the Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart, and the heart of his servants, that I might show my power over him, and so that you may tell in the ears of your son and your son's son what things I have brought about in Egypt, and my miracles which I have done among them, that you may know that I am the Lord." And that's from Exodus chapter 10, verses 1 and 2. You know, after hearing those words, Moses went to the Pharaoh a number of times to renew his pleas for the Hebrews' freedom. Each plea was rejected, and each rejection was followed by calamity visited upon the Egyptians by Jehovah. The calamities included vermine infestations, plagues, boils on the skins, caused by a fine dust setting over the countryside, and finally the murder of each eldest son in Egypt during a night known as the Passover. That's who it was, the Passover. It was only after the Passover that Jehovah stopped hardening the heart of the Pharaoh so that the Hebrew tribes could leave Egypt. And many scholars would argue that biblical references to Jehovah harden the hearts of Israel's enemy merely express the religious idea that all human thought and emotion come ultimately from God, and therefore such writing should not be taken literally. In this case, we should take the Bible seriously because it has described a very real political phenomenon. Two or more parties being manipulated into conflict with one another by an outside third party. One of the most famous philosophers to discuss third-party manipulation as a tool of social and political control was Niccolo Machiavelli. He's a 6th century philosopher. Among Machiavelli, although Machiavelli was not the first to write about these matters, his name has become synonymous with unscrupulous political cunning. Machiavelli authored several unsolicited how-to manuals for the benefit of a local prince. Those writings have become literary classics in them. Machiavelli describes several of the techniques used by various Italian rulers to maintain control over a population. Mind you, that population can be a large population, such as in a city or town, or even a state, or a small crew of a work site, and, controlled and manipulate the state of conduct of the crew. So keep that in mind, please. Anyway, one of those techniques, one of the methods of doing that, controlling small, populations, was to breed conflict. In this treatise, Prince Machiavelli wrote, and this is in quote, "Some princesses, so as to hold securely the state, have disarmed their subjects. Others have kept their subject towns distracted by factions," and that's by disputes. Those factions refer to things called disputes. Machiavelli just cited a specific example, and this is once again a quote. "Our forefathers and those who were reckoned wise were accustomed to say that it was necessary to hold Pistoia, and that's an Italian city, by factions, and Pisa by fortress. And with this idea, they fostered quarrels. In some of their, tributary towns, so as to keep possession of them the more easily. Human disunity was a valuable commodity to the princesses. The prince, yes, the male equivalent. Because it made the people, less able to mount a challenge. Simple as that. Machiavelli described the exact steps to be taken by anyone wishing to employ this tool. And this is once again in quotes. "The way to set about this is to win the confidence of the city, which is disunited. And so as long as they do not come to blows, to act as arbitrators between parties, and when they come to blows, to give tardy support to the weaker party, both with a view to keeping them at it and wearing them out. And again, because stronger measures would leave no room for any doubt that you were out to subjugate them and make yourself their ruler." I'll go on. "When this scheme is carried out, it will happen, as always, that the end you have in view will be attained. The city of Pistoia, as I have said in another discourse, and apropos of another topic, was acquired by the Republic of Florence by just such an artifice. For it was divided, and the Florentines supported not now one, now the other party, and without making themselves obnoxious to either. Led them on till they got sick of the turbulent ways, the turbulent way, I repeat that, the turbulent way of living, and in the end, to throw themselves voluntarily into the arms of Florence." interesting. Despite the effectiveness, and I am saying it is effective, the effectiveness of this technique, Machiavelli advised against using it because it can backfire on the perpetrator. The success of the technique depends upon at least one of the manipulated parties not being aware of the true source of the problem. If both parties should discover that they are being manipulated into hostilities by an outside third party, not only will those hostilities usually cease, but the party will, more often than not, unite in a common dislike for the perpetrator. This phenomenon can be observed on a personal level when two friends discover that a third friend has been saying derogatory things about each one to the other behind their backs. For the technique to be effective, the perpetrator must remain hidden from view as the source of the conflict. To summarize the observation of Machiavelli, we find that breeding conflict between people can be an effective tool for maintaining social and political control over a populace, city, a town, a small group, a working crew, a party crew, anything, call it. For the technique to be effective, the instigator must do the following. He must erect conflicts and issues which will cause people to fight among themselves rather than against the perpetrator. Okay. 2, remain hidden from view as the true instigator of the conflict. 3, you got to lend support to all warring parties. You give support to this one, you give support to them. Keep them separate. Talk to them in secret over there, talk to them in secret over there. Keep them separated. Have a third party watching them too, all that shit. Anyway, and 4th, be viewed as the benevolent source which can solve the conflict. We have conflict, we'll run to the same, right? That's pretty Machiavellian, if you ask me, right? There's probably been, that's been written about, and this is something that's been noted early in time in the Tower of Babel story. The custodial gods wanted to keep mankind disunited and under custodial control. To accomplish this, the biblical story of Jehovah indicates that custodians implemented the Machiavellian techniques of creating factionalism between human beings. The Bible states that custodians encouraged the faction they controlled to battle one another. All the while, the custodians have proclaimed themselves the God, an angel, to whom people should turn in order to find a solution to all of the warfare. This is the classic sequence straight out of Machiavelli. For such Machiavellian efforts to remain successful over a long period of time, factionalism would need to be bred constantly. And the custodians would need to remain permanently hidden from view as the perpetrators. Both of these needs were met in the organizational structures of the corrupted Brotherhood. The Brotherhood was being forged into a far-flung network of politically powerful secret societies and religions which could successfully organize people into competing factions. At the same time, Brotherhood traditions of secrecy effectively disguised as organizational hierarchy. This secrecy became a screen behind which custodians could hide at the top of the Brotherhood hierarchy behind veils of myth and thereby obscure Their role as instigators of violent conflict between human beings. In this fashion, the network of brotherhood organizations became the primary channel through which wars between human beings could be secretly and continuously generated by the custodial society, thereby carrying out the custodial intentions announced in the Tower of Babel story. The Brotherhood also became the channel to which custodial institutions could be imposed upon the human race. That's a lot, huh? Wars serve another custodial purpose revealed in the Bible. The Adam and Eve story mentions God's intention to make physical survival, an all-consuming choice, or chore, I'm all tired today, chore from birth until death. War helped bring about, war helped bring this about, being they absorb large-scale resources and offer little to enhance life in return. Wars tear down and destroy what has already been created. This makes a great deal of extra effort necessary just to maintain a culture. The more society engages in building war machines and fighting wars, the more the people of that society will find their lives consumed in tedium and repetitious toil because of the parasitic and destructive nature of war. This is as true today as it was in 2000, 1000 BC, 500 BC, whenever. It is easily observed that people will fight and quarrel without any outside prompting. You know, there is hardly a creature on earth that does not, at some time in its life, attack another. One clearly does not need a manipulative third party for a dispute to arise between groups of people. Third parties simply cause disputes and conflicts to be more frequent, severe, and protracted. Spontaneous, uninfluenced fights tend to be quick, awkward, and centered around a single visible dispute. The way to keep fighting artificially alive is to create unresolvable issues which can only be settled by the complete annihilation of one of the opponents. And then, by helping the opposing teams sustain their struggle against one another by equalizing their fighting strengths. Let me just catch a breather here. Let me breathe for a second. That's said a lot. You know, to keep, think about it. To keep a whole race in a constant state of strife, issues over which members of the race will fight one another must be generated continuously, and fervent warriors must be bred to fight in those causes, to fight for these causes. You know, these are the precise types of conflicts which have been created by the Brotherhood network all the way up until today. These artificial conflicts were embroiled from human race in the unrelieved morass of wars, which have so blighted human history. Detecting Brotherhood involvement in human events is sometimes tricky. The job is made easier by following the use of several of the Brotherhood's most important mystical symbols. These symbols act as colored threads weaving in and out of view by which we can trace the role of the Brotherhood network in shaping history. One of the most significant of the symbols, and there's not one of the many. Listen, I'm going to leave it here. I think I've disclosed enough things that you should know about you, others, humanity. Anyway, look, it's all done. Peace and love. God bless us. Amen. Peace out.